set then? And the timer? All right, let's begin. Famed American athlete Muhammad Ali once said, hating people because of their color is just wrong. And it doesn't matter which color is doing the hating, it's just plain wrong, end quote. You see, in today's society, many people have mangled the concept of racism in order to fit their extreme false narratives. For instance, in one area of society, literal racism is prevalent and thriving, but is not regarded as such simply because it's not directed at the minorities. Meanwhile, on the other end of the spectrum, people will scream and shout that there is racism, that it is thriving, when actually no prejudice or bias is existent. You see, these lies are so detrimental to the improvements that we as Americans have made in the past century, and it's time that our eyes were finally opened to this fact. Now see, this deception comes primarily through two aspects. These two aspects, although they occur in very different circumstances and push for very different opinions, the end result is always the same, that of a damaged society. And these two aspects are sensitivity and ignorance. Sensitivity and ignorance. And I'll be talking about each one in turn today in depth and showing you how each individually hurts us as a nation. Starting off with sensitivity. Now, I'm Black in case you hadn't noticed this, and I was actually adopted at my birth by a white family because my biological mother was in a tough position when she gave birth to me. Because of this, my parents were very wise and exposed me to all sorts of Black culture, events, and whatnot in our environment in order to introduce me to that part of my ancestry. However, in my own homeschool community, the majority of the other students and my friends are white. Therefore, I've been able to strengthen myself and my feelings regarding race and those topics because I've been able to see the sides of both sides of the spectrum. And I've been very blessed in this way. However, many people do not have this, and that leads to the sensitivity that we see in culture today. For instance, I'm sure that you've heard something along the lines of the following. A joke is made, the Black person is offended, or white people offended on our behalf. But think about this. Was a joke ever actually demeaning to Black culture in the first place? Many times, it actually was not. And the impact this has on society is scary. In my own community alone, which is relatively inclusive and open to new ideas, I've had friends be too afraid to ask me about my differences. You see, I always have to make jokes or introduce them to my life to make them realize it's not an offensive ordeal. See, I would sometimes compare us to chocolate and vanilla ice cream. And I would say, people love chocolate ice cream just as much as vanilla ice cream. But then I saw a poll on debate.org that actually showed that 65% of people prefer vanilla over chocolate ice cream. I should have known because I myself hate chocolate ice cream, but that's not the point. I would also talk about my family. You see, my father in particular really enjoys cheesy songs. If it has no moral meaning and is sung by either a talking cucumber or a cartoon dog, then he loves it. When he loves it, he sings it. He has a great singing voice too, which in all reality makes the situation that much worse. So when he decides to sing these out in public, me and my younger sister, who is also Black and adopted, run and hide. Now, no one knows that we are in any way affiliated with a singing white man in the cereal aisle of our supermarket. And it works every time. So I would tell this to my friends, to let them know that it's not an offensive ordeal, that our differences are gifts from God in more ways than one. However, this was still not enough to take away from that negative impact society had on them. After I told one shy friend, he laughed and said that he did have questions, that he was interested, but he wasn't ready to ask them to me yet. And I thought that's perfectly fine. But then I learned his reasons for doing so were because he didn't want to offend me. He had to try and word every question perfectly, when in reality, his questions were so simple as asking why I was Black and my family was white. The things that in no way should demean or belittle another human and their differences. You see, those that are too sensitive to things pertaining to race in our society have drawn admiration away from one of God's greatest gifts to humankind. The fact that he is able to create such a wide array of humans, yet is still able to fully represent each and every single one of us to perfection is an amazing picture. My friend was on his way to realizing this gift found only in God and his creation. But because of society and culture, he was hindered. He lost that curiosity and passion because he was too afraid of offending me in a circumstance that wouldn't have offended me at all. We need to not be so sensitive anymore. You see, this sensitivity is past to simply being polite, simply being cautious to show that you care. And while these are good and admirable things, that's not the reality of the situation in all circumstances. You see, that's not the change that society needs. And now, on to that second aspect, that of ignorance. Well, ignorance to what, you might ask? Well, to the sheer definition of racism itself. Now, if you're like me, you enjoy reclining in a comfy chair with a snack and a drink or two, and then going on Facebook to look through the comment sections of controversial posts. Now, in these comment sections, I always find one ideal in society that always angers me. And it is this, that because of what white people did to black people in the past, the black people cannot have any opinion on white people, and it's deemed as simply offending their people, no matter how brutal that opinion. But white people cannot have an opinion on black people, because that's then racist, right? No matter how innocent that opinion. And that is the definition of racism. You see, logical and non-demeaning thoughts are not automatically irrelevant or false because of somebody's skin tone, because of where they come from, because of who they are. And it's really hard sometimes for me not to have to attack those keyboard warriors on Facebook. You see, it is entirely possible to be black and racist. It's not only possible, but it exists. You see, if we ever want to claim that racism is still a huge issue, we have to recognize that it does happen on both sides. You see, we cannot scream for black people who are subject to racism and ignore that white people also are prone to racist attacks upon them. On these comment sections, even in real life, I've heard people screaming at white people saying that they're racist, that what they do sounds about white, that they just can't stand to watch others races succeed. This has gone unnoticed in our society for too long. People have either been blind to this or have stayed silent simply out of fear of attack. But when did they forget? When did America forget? When did you and I forget that no society has ever grown without a conflict? No society ever improves without a hindrance of some sort. After all, what is perseverance if there is no hindrance? What is courage if there is no fear? What is bravery if there is no danger? For God calls us to be warriors for him, but what is a warrior if he does not participate in the battle but any other average man of this earth? And this is our battle, so we must fight it. And I do not get special cards, such as the treasure cards in Monopoly that say pass go, which for me say pass racism, pass the definition, pass logic because of what happened to your people. Because of course bad things happened, terrible stuff occurred, but that does not mean we now get to turn around and give it right back. You see, Bandisa and Toby Mac sing in their song Bleed the Same, that we all bleed the same. We are more beautiful when we come together, so tell me why we are divided. And David writes in the Psalms how good and pleasant it is when God's people live together in unity. Martin Luther King Jr. had a dream. Rosa Parks was defiant. Thousands of slaves were on a mission. Nowhere in any other legacies did they leave the idea that we must retaliate the same awful actions in return. King did not have the vision of little black boys and girls holding hands with little white boys and girls so that the black could demean the whites as they were due. Rosa Parks did not stay planted like a rock for Jesus on that bus seat with the vision of the black sitting there and pushing the whites to the back in return. That's not how love works. That's not how unity works. That's not how our God works. So sensitivity and ignorance are dragging us right back down the dark path that we were in. And we can see the light at the end of the tunnel, but we are never going to reach it if we just switch sides, go to the opposite end of the spectrum. So what can we do? We can speak up, fight for truth. No longer try to hide these blatant differences. No longer even tolerate those who take their false opinions to the extreme. Because we will be attacked, we will be hurt. But when did both the concept and the achievement of an improved society promise us that a journey to get there would be fruitless? The answer is never. God himself said that we will struggle, so go struggle for him. Now, I like to think that poll on debate.org was missing one important third candidate, the soft serve twist. Both flavors are intertwined in perfect unison and unity, working together to create perfect flavors, while their differences remain obvious. Speak truth, so that when we arise from the pain and attacks of the earth, we do so with a smile. For the dream will truly have been fulfilled, the mission fully accomplished, and the defiance no longer met in vain.